In the early 2000s, Lydia, a single mother from a small town in Kansas, took in a troubled young man named Brian. He was the son of a distant relative who had fallen on hard times. At just 14 years old, Brian had been struggling with behavioral issues stemming from neglect and a lack of guidance in his home life. Lydia, in her early 40s at the time, was already a mother of 2 grown children. Still, she couldn't ignore the way Brian had been left behind by his own family. She took him in, offering him a safe haven in her home, as if he were her own son. For years, Lydia dedicated herself to Brian's well-being. She ensured he had food, clothing, and opportunities to thrive. She helped him with school, gave him the confidence to pursue sports, and treated him like a member of her family. She was emotionally invested in his success, happy to have him around her family dinners, and even considered him the son she never had. Her biological children, though skeptical at first, eventually accepted him as one of their own. But as Brian entered his early 20s, Lydia began to notice strange changes. He started to distance himself, spending more time away from home and becoming more secretive. Lydia brushed it off as normal teenage rebellion. But soon, she noticed things that couldn't be ignored. Brian had begun to have secretive interactions with her closest friends and, to her horror, had started an affair with her best friend, Paula. It was the ultimate betrayal. Brian, the boy she had raised with love, the one she had nurtured and protected, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Paula, a woman she had known for years and trusted implicitly, was the one who had turned her back on their decades-long friendship for the sake of an illicit romance with someone she saw as a surrogate son. The emotional turmoil that Lydia faced was unfathomable. She felt confused, enraged, and hurt. The betrayal was far deeper than she could have imagined. Not only had Brian broken her trust, but Paula, the woman who had known the depth of Lydia's heart, was the one who had helped tear it apart. The emotional attachment Lydia had built with Brian seemed to disappear overnight, leaving a stranger in his place. As the affair came to light, Lydia confronted both of them. Paula, filled with guilt, tried to justify her actions, but it was clear to Lydia that their bond was forever shattered. Brian, now an adult, had nothing to say for himself other than to apologize half-heartedly. But the damage was done. How could Lydia, after all the years she had spent emotionally investing in this young man, ever see him the same way again? The aftermath was brutal. Lydia's family rallied around her, but the emotional scars remained. Brian eventually left town, unable to face the weight of the betrayal. Paula, on the other hand, chose to continue the relationship with Brian, leaving Lydia feeling abandoned by both the people she trusted most. This betrayal became a turning point in Lydia's life. She learned the hard way that sometimes, no matter how much love and care you give, people can still betray you in ways that hurt deeply. Emotional attachment, when intertwined with trust, creates an intimacy that can be easily shattered by a single act of disloyalty. She began to realize the importance of protecting her heart and no longer allowing people to become too enmeshed in her emotional world without first ensuring they respected the bond that had been formed. Emotional investment in relationships forms the bedrock of human connection, and it is particularly poignant when it manifests in the form of a parental-like care for someone who is not your biological child. The depth of this investment transcends the casual interactions and becomes a profound commitment to the well-being, growth, and happiness of the other person. In the case of Lydia's story, her decision to raise Brian as if he were her own son was driven by a deep-seated compassion for his troubled past and a desire to offer him a better future. She didn't just open her home to him, she opened her heart. This act of kindness was not motivated by obligation, but by an emotional attachment that slowly evolved as she witnessed Brian's struggles and realized how much he needed someone to believe in him. She offered him not only shelter, but also a sense of stability and hope, things he had lacked for most of his life. The emotional investment Lydia made in Brian was total. As a mother herself, she understood the value of love, support, and guidance in a young person's life. She saw in Brian not just a troubled teenager, but a boy who had the potential to turn his life around with the right nurturing. Lydia's role in his life wasn't limited to providing him with the basic necessities. She invested emotionally in his personal development, offering wisdom from her own experiences and guiding him through the challenges that adolescence brought. She celebrated his successes, whether big or small, and reassured him during his failures, teaching him resilience and persistence. For Lydia, Brian's growth was personal, and his challenges became her own. Her emotional attachment to him grew stronger as the years passed, creating a bond that resembled that of a mother and son. This emotional commitment also meant that Lydia made sacrifices. She had her own family, and raising Brian, who wasn't even her biological child, meant putting aside time and resources that could have gone elsewhere. She sacrificed her own comfort and happiness to make sure Brian had the opportunities he needed to thrive. This level of investment was not easy. It meant giving up some of her personal space and emotional energy to care for someone who, at times, pushed her limits. But Lydia's investment was more than just about the material things she provided. It was about the emotional and psychological safety she gave Brian. She offered him a sense of belonging, something that he had never fully experienced in his life. She was his constant, his rock, and in return, she expected nothing but trust and loyalty. Her care for Brian went beyond the surface level. It was deep-rooted, shaped by years of nurturing and guiding him through the complexities of life. This type of emotional attachment is complicated because it doesn't always come with immediate rewards. While biological parents may find some form of reciprocity in the love and respect of their children, raising someone who is not your own can sometimes feel thankless. This was the case with Lydia, who poured everything into Brian without ever expecting a perfect return on her investment. She didn't expect him to owe her anything, but she did expect that the trust she placed in him would be respected. The emotional care Lydia provided wasn't something she was doing for recognition. It was because she genuinely believed in Brian and wanted to see him succeed. She took on the role of a mother because she wanted to give him the stability and love he had never known. This emotional investment can feel both rewarding and exhausting. The highs, like Brian's accomplishments and moments of connection, were incredibly fulfilling. However, the lows, such as his withdrawal, secretiveness, and eventual betrayal, were emotionally taxing, challenging Lydia's ability to reconcile the relationship she thought she had nurtured with the reality of what had happened. For Lydia, this emotional investment wasn't just about giving, it was also about receiving, though in a different way. She found fulfillment in seeing Brian grow, even if he didn't fully understand the extent of her sacrifices at the time. The emotional rewards were often subtle, manifesting in the moments when Brian showed kindness, sought her advice, or simply shared a laugh with her. But these moments of closeness were tempered by the realization that her deep emotional commitment had been betrayed, creating a complex emotional landscape filled with both love and pain. The experience underscores how deeply emotional investment can shape the way people bond and interact, and how the unexpected nature of betrayal can leave lasting scars, even when the original intentions were pure and selfless. Betrayal in relationships, especially those built on deep emotional investment, cuts to the core of human experience. It involves a breach of trust that not only shatters the bond between individuals, but also leaves deep emotional scars that can last for years. In the context of Lydia's story, the betrayal by Brian, the young man she had raised as her own son, was particularly painful because it occurred in a relationship that had been built on the foundation of unconditional care, love, and protection. The emotional depth of their bond made the betrayal feel even more profound, as it was not merely a failure of a casual friendship, but a violation of a parental-like relationship that Lydia had nurtured with time, energy, and emotional investment. When someone betrays your trust, especially when that trust is a deeply held belief that the other person values the bond as much as you do, the sense of loss is intensified. The complexity of betrayal lies not only in the hurt caused by the breach of trust itself, but also in the emotional aftermath. Lydia's sense of betrayal was not simply about Brian's actions in starting an affair with her best friend, Paula. It was also about the emotional investment she had made in him, which made her feel as though her entire understanding of their relationship had been upended. She had treated him as a son, loving him as a mother would, offering him protection and guidance through his formative years. To be betrayed by someone you have raised is a violation that extends beyond the mere act of infidelity. It challenges the very notion of love, loyalty, and familial connection. It causes one to question the authenticity of the relationship and whether the emotional bond ever truly existed in the first place. What makes betrayal particularly difficult to process is the sudden shift from intimacy to emotional distance. The person who was once your confidant, your childlike figure, becomes a stranger. For Lydia, this transformation was devastating. The same young man who once relied on her support, who shared his hopes and fears, had now chosen to betray the trust she had placed in him. It was as if the emotional connection they had built over the years no longer mattered to him, and that sense of abandonment was more painful than the affair itself. Lydia was left not only with the knowledge that Brian had broken her trust, but with the bitter realization that he had also disregarded the care and effort she had put into shaping his life. Betrayal also introduces a sense of confusion. How could someone who you had cared for so deeply, whom you had raised with love and dedication, betray you so easily? This question haunts those who experience such a breach of trust, and Lydia found herself grappling with it for months after discovering the affair. Her emotional turmoil was compounded by the fact that she had never expected betrayal from Brian. She had given him everything: her time, her love, and her unwavering belief in his potential. For her, this act of betrayal was a complete rejection of everything they had shared. In her eyes, Brian's actions symbolized not only a betrayal of her trust, but also an abandonment of the values of love, respect, and loyalty that she had tried to instill in him. The emotional complexity of betrayal becomes even more layered when the betrayer is someone you see as family. In Lydia's case, Paula's involvement in the affair only deepened the betrayal. Paula wasn't just Brian's lover. She was Lydia's best friend, someone who had been part of her life for years. The betrayal, therefore, was twofold. It was a violation of the bond between Lydia and Brian, but it was also a deep betrayal by someone Lydia had considered a close confidant. Paula knew Lydia's heart. She understood how much Brian meant to her. For Paula to engage in such a relationship with him was a blow not only to Lydia's trust in Brian, but to her trust in people in general. The idea that someone so close to her could also betray her left Lydia in a state of emotional disbelief. The consequences of betrayal in such an intimate relationship are long-lasting. It's not something that can be easily forgotten or brushed aside. The sense of loss is palpable because the trust that was broken isn't just between two individuals, it affects everyone involved. For Lydia, the betrayal left her feeling isolated and emotionally scarred. The idea of opening herself up to another person after such an experience became incredibly difficult. Betrayal has a way of making people question the motives of others, even those who have not done anything wrong. It creates an emotional barrier that can be hard to break down, leaving the betrayed person with feelings of vulnerability and distrust. Ultimately, betrayal reshapes the way people view relationships. It creates a sense of emotional fragmentation, where the person you once trusted is now viewed through a lens of suspicion and hurt. Lydia's story demonstrates how betrayal can fracture even the closest of bonds, and how the emotional aftermath can haunt someone for a long time. When trust is broken in such an intimate relationship, it's not just about the act of betrayal itself, it's about the emotional devastation it leaves behind, altering one's perception of love, loyalty, and human connection forever.